I'm hiding the biggest secret of my life from the person I love most. And every day I stay silent, it's getting harder to breathe. I've been with my boyfriend Mason for almost 2 years now. We met through friends at a 4th of July barbecue, the kind where everyone's drinking cheap beer and pretending not to fall in love in the middle of the fireworks. But I did. It was stupid fast, how he smiled, how he listened, how he made space for me in a world that always felt like it was rushing past. He was calm. He was safe. We moved in together after 9 months. It felt natural, even though my best friend warned me, "You're rushing. You don't really know someone until you live with them." But I felt like I knew him, more than I knew myself. Mason's the kind of guy who always brings home your favorite candy without asking. The kind who checks that you locked your car even though he already did it himself. There's nothing flashy about him. He's not the guy who throws romantic grand gestures, but he's steady. And for someone like me who grew up with chaos, that kind of stability is more romantic than any bouquet of roses. But beneath all of that, the shared toothbrush holder, the Netflix passwords, the mornings when he kisses my forehead before work, there's this truth, a massive suffocating truth. And I've never told him. I keep thinking I'll tell him tomorrow, but tomorrow turns into next week, and then next month. And now we're approaching 2 years, and he still doesn't know. Because if I tell him the truth, I'm afraid it'll be the end. Not just of our relationship, but of how he sees me, who he thinks I am. You see, Mason doesn't know I used to work in adult content. Not just casually, not just one time. I ran a full-blown OnlyFans account for over a year before I met him. It was anonymous, no face, no personal details, but it was real. It paid off my college debt. It got me out of a bad living situation. It gave me the independence I needed. But it's not something I've ever talked about. Not to my family, not to my coworkers, and certainly not to the man I now share a bed with every night. In the beginning, it felt like a detail I could leave behind. A chapter closed. Mason was kind, respectful, not the type to ask about my past if I didn't bring it up, so I didn't. But the more serious we got, the more it started to gnaw at me. Not because I'm ashamed, I'm not. I made that decision, I owned it. But because every time he talks about how much he respects me, how pure I am compared to his exes, it makes my stomach turn. He doesn't know. He thinks I'm someone else, someone I'm not. And the longer I stay quiet, the more I feel like a fraud, like I'm tricking him, lying to someone who's done nothing but love me with his whole heart. It's not just about the sex work, it's about the trust. If the roles were reversed, if he'd hidden something like that from me, would I be okay with it? I don't know. Sometimes I tell myself it's not a big deal, that the past is the past. But then he'll make an offhand joke about girls with OnlyFans, or mention how he could never be with someone who put themselves out there like that, and I go quiet. I smile, I nod, and inside a small part of me breaks. What if I tell him and he leaves? What if I don't tell him, and he finds out anyway? What if I wait too long, and when I finally do open up, the lie matters more than the truth? I lie awake at night rehearsing the conversation. I need to tell you something, before we go any further, but I never get the words out. I always freeze. Because this isn't just about honesty. It's about identity, shame, love, fear. And every day I wait, I'm more unsure if I'm protecting the relationship or slowly, silently destroying it. It started with small changes, little shifts that to anyone else wouldn't mean much, but to me they were earthquakes. Mason and I used to talk about everything. We'd make breakfast together, sit on the couch at night watching dumb crime shows, trade jokes while folding laundry. I used to feel light around him, like I could exhale. But as the secret grew heavier, so did I. I stopped making eye contact when he said he loved me. Not because I didn't love him back, but because I wasn't sure he'd still say it if he really knew me. He'd ask me what was wrong and I'd say nothing. Just tired. I was always tired. Tired of lying. Tired of acting like I was fine. Tired of playing a character in a love story that was supposed to be mine. Then one night we went to dinner with his friends. A casual double date, burgers, beer, laughter echoing through the restaurant. But somehow the conversation turned to relationships and secrets. One of his friends said something like, "Man, as long as my girl's past doesn't involve anything crazy, I don't need to know." Mason laughed. Same. Like if she ever had an OnlyFans or something, I'd be out. It was a joke. A dumb, offhand, not thought-through joke. But I couldn't breathe. I smiled, sipped my drink, and laughed along with everyone else. But inside it felt like someone had poured ice water straight down my spine. That night I cried in the shower. Quietly, so he wouldn't hear me. He came in while I was getting dressed and asked if everything was okay. I told him I had cramps. He brought me a heating pad, kissed my forehead, and held me in bed until I fell asleep. And I hated myself for lying, again. Days passed, then weeks. I started avoiding intimacy, not just physically, but emotionally. I became more distant, less present. And Mason noticed. He asked if I was losing interest, if something had changed. He kept trying to pull me closer, but every time he did, I stepped just out of reach. I told myself I was protecting him, that I needed to wait for the right moment. But the truth was, I was protecting myself, because I knew what could happen when the words finally left my mouth. And I wasn't ready to watch the way he looked at me change. Then last week, something happened that forced me to confront everything. I came home early from work and found him sitting at the kitchen table scrolling on his laptop. He didn't hear me come in, his headphones were on. I looked over his shoulder and saw Reddit, a thread. Would you leave your girlfriend if you found out she had an OnlyFans before meeting you? I froze. He was reading the comments, scrolling, nodding along to the replies that said things like, "Yeah, it's a hard no for me. Major trust issue. And it's not about the past, it's about what she chose to hide." I backed out quietly, went into the bedroom, shut the door, and I sat on the floor and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. It's not that he was looking at the thread. It's that he was seeking answers. He knew something was off. He could feel the weight of the silence I had been carrying. He didn't have the details, but he knew there was a wall between us, and he was already starting to wonder what might be on the other side. That night he didn't mention it, didn't bring it up, just held me a little tighter, but I felt the shift, the unspoken space growing wider. The lie was no longer just mine. It was becoming his too. And the question I kept asking myself over and over was, if I love him, why can't I just tell him? I almost told him last Friday. It was raining, one of those long, moody summer storms where everything feels heavier than it should. The sky was gray thunder, murmuring in the distance, like the universe itself was waiting for something to break. We were curled up on the couch watching an old movie. I wasn't even paying attention. My heartbeat was louder than the dialogue, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mason looked over, noticed. "You're quiet," he said, nudging my knee with his. "What's going on in that head of yours?" And I almost said it. The words were right there, sitting on the edge of my tongue. "I need to tell you something about who I was before you." But I couldn't. My throat tightened. My chest clenched. I opened my mouth and then closed it again. Instead, I shook my head and whispered, "Just tired." He nodded, gave me a small, worried smile, wrapped his arm around me like he always did. And just like that, the moment passed, again. But the storm outside wasn't done, and neither was the one inside me. Later that night, long after he'd fallen asleep, I got up and sat at the kitchen table in the dark. I opened my laptop, pulled up my old login to the platform I hadn't touched in nearly 2 years. Just looking at the dashboard made my stomach twist. It wasn't shame, it was fear. Fear of what that version of me meant now. Fear of what he would think if he saw it. I hovered over the delete account button for a long time, but I didn't click it, because erasing it wouldn't erase the truth. And the truth was this: I had done it. It was part of my story. It was how I survived, how I paid off my debt, how I built a bridge between the girl I used to be and the woman I'm still trying to become. The next morning, I sat across from Mason at breakfast and stared at the man who had given me so much comfort, so much peace, and I realized I was afraid. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I did. Because if he looked at me differently, if this changed how he saw me, I wouldn't just lose a boyfriend. I'd lose the one person who made me feel like I was more than the sum of my past. That afternoon, I called my best friend. I'd never told her about the account either. I finally let it spill every detail. The decision to start it, the money, the anonymity, the way it made me feel powerful and ashamed all at once. I sobbed through the whole call. She listened. And then she said, "It doesn't define you, but if you love him and you want something real, you can't keep living in this half-truth." She was right. I didn't want to keep Mason in the dark. I didn't want our relationship built on silence. So I planned it out. Saturday night, no distractions, no phone, no escape route. I rehearsed it 100 times in my head. I was ready, or as ready as I was ever going to be. But that night, he never came home. His text said, "Hey, staying out with the guys a little longer. You okay?" And suddenly I felt relief and guilt. The moment had been taken from me. Or maybe I had let it slip away again. It's been 3 days since I was supposed to tell him. 3 days of pretending everything is fine. Of making coffee, folding laundry, scrolling through TikToks, while he lays next to me completely unaware of the tidal wave sitting just inches from his feet. And I'm still here, still silent, still watching the window for a lightning strike that never comes. I've rewritten the speech in my head so many times that it doesn't even sound real anymore. The words feel distant, foreign, like a scene in a movie I can't step into. And I ask myself over and over, what's worse, the truth, or the time I've spent hiding it? Because now it's not just about what I did before we met. Now it's about the lie of omission. The version of me he's loved built his life around she's missing a piece. And that piece is starting to crumble under the weight of everything I haven't said. I want to believe he'd understand, that he'd listen, that the man who brings me soup when I'm sick and rubs my back when I cry would stay. But I don't know. And that's the part that keeps me up at night. Because if I tell him I risk everything, but if I don't, am I really loving him or just using him to feel whole? Some nights I look at him and think, he deserves to know. He deserves the choice. Other nights I look at him and think, if he knows he'll leave. And I don't know who I'll be without him. So here I am, in between the truth and the lie, in between the past I lived and the future I want. And I still haven't told him, not yet. But I will. I have to. Don't I? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you tell the truth and risk everything or keep the past in the past and protect the love you've built? Let us know in the comments below. If this story moved you or made you think, please take a second to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us bring more real, raw, and powerful stories to life. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one.